Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone on the call. Thanks for joining today's discussion. I believe the topic is very timely as we have seen cloud solutions and cloud deployments taking more and more ground over the course of the last few years. And enterprises increasingly are asking themselves the question, how do we make sure that these cloud solutions that provide incremental benefits to our business can interoperate securely and successfully with the inherited solutions that we have on-premise. And we will be discussing together with Carl today what an approach would be to addressing this, to understand where cloud should be considered as a serious opportunity and where potentially you may want to back off of using cloud, and how this enables enterprises to transform themselves. I'm very happy to welcome Carl with us on this call today. Carl and I have a long-standing relationship, and I'm very pleased you agreed to work with us on this webinar today, Carl. And with this said, I'm handing it over to you for the first part of the conversation.
Great, thanks, Uli. As Uli mentioned, my name is Carl Lehman. I'm an IT research analyst with 451 Research. I focus on enterprise architecture, integration, and process management. And Software AG invited me today to discuss with you the impact of hybrid clouds on enterprise IT and how to benefit from it. For those of you unfamiliar with 451 Research, we're an IT research and advisory firm headquartered in New York. We operate in 7 countries. We have close to 300 folks working in our organization, over 100 analysts, and I think we're up to about 1,300 client organizations. We help end users with IT strategy. We help IT vendors with product strategy, and we help IT investors with investment strategy. Today, I'd like to talk to you about some of the challenges facing organizations as cloud computing permeates the IT infrastructure and businesses at large. My goal here is to present a line of reasoning, a mindset, if you will, that you need to have when you're beginning to include cloud services as part of your IT infrastructure and using them to run your business. So to that end, I'm going to describe a little bit about what's driving hybrid clouds, what makes hybrid cloud integration different from the traditional integration technologies and techniques enterprises are used to. I'll be talking about IT modernization driven by cloud strategy and cloud technology, and what are the enablers of modernization. I'm also going to talk about the role of enterprise architecture in hybrid IT as a means to control decisions and investments. And that includes a discussion of portfolio management, or the techniques and tools needed for planning and control. Then I'll also address lightly techniques and tools to design, run, and adapt hybrid clouds, and then kind of summarize with the best and worst practices of hybrid cloud enablement. I guess the key point that I want everyone to keep in mind here is that hybrid cloud technology, hybrid cloud architecture is a benefit in that it can help simplify a lot of things, but it's a detriment in that it could be it's a new form of complexity. It enables a business to do many more things. It enables an IT organization a great deal of efficiencies, but it also addresses, or it also introduces new complexity in IT strategy, in business strategy, and in IT architecture that requires a new way of analysis and a new way of decision making that needs to guide your investments going into the future. So with that in mind, let me talk a little bit more about what's driving hybrid clouds. First, to level set, I'm sure we're all aware of hybrid cloud discussions and technologies. But to level set things, I just want to alert the audience to the fact that there's multiple configurations of digital infrastructure and cloud services. And that adds to the complexity, requiring a better form of analysis. There's traditional non-cloud infrastructure that's internal on-premise or off-premise outsourcing that we're familiar with. Private clouds are internal and on-premise, or they can be on-premises and hosted, driven by a managed service provider, or they can be off-premise hosted. Public clouds, of course, we're familiar with infrastructure, platform, and software as a service, but there's a whole emerging set of specialty niche cloud platforms that offer very specific things like storage as a service or application development as a service, cloud management, business process management. So our discussion, our definition of hybrid cloud here at 451 is it's a delivery model. It consists of two or more distinct cloud infrastructures that remain unique, but they're coordinated or standardized through a variety of proprietary technology. But most importantly, they interoperate to deliver seamless business processes, seamless business functions. The goal here for hybrid cloud is to understand and assure competitive advantage and business continuity as you begin to deploy hybrid cloud architecture. So we also do a great deal of primary research. And we researched some 2,000 enterprises, asking them some simple questions. Which of the following best describes your organization's adoption of cloud computing models? 16% said they have a broad implementation of production applications in cloud architecture. 29% said they had initially implemented production apps. And others are still kind of running in trials and discovery. But a total of 40% are beyond, 45% are beyond that. They're running production applications in the cloud. And when we ask them what is their cloud architecture, those that are using the cloud services for broad implementation of production applications are doing it on either a combination of on-prem hosted private or hosted private public. And those just getting started are on-prem hosted private or on-prem public, meaning that there's multiple cloud architectures in place. And indeed, the direction is to a hybrid integration of multiple environments. But this is an interesting chart. We also asked them, has your organization configured any of the following clouds for interoperability? Half of them said yes, roughly. And 61% are using on-premise private with hosted private. And 42% said they're using on-premise private with public cloud. And another 40% with hosted private and public. We allowed multiple answers for this question. And this brings to light the fact that it's not just a hybrid cloud architecture that you're going to be dealing with. You'll be dealing with multiple hybrid cloud architectures in your enterprise. This adds to complexity and increases the potential for risk, which means that there needs to be a better way of analyzing business needs, IT infrastructure, and understanding how best to establish, develop, and create workloads in and across hybrid cloud architecture. So that means we need some new tools. But before we get into a discussion of a tool, I want to explain a little bit about why hybrid cloud integration is different from the traditional forms of integration we deal with as enterprises. Basically, the fundamental difference in the hybrid cloud architecture is the challenges of data and process flows. As we shift workloads across public and private infrastructure and hosted and public clouds, we're essentially establishing a multi-cloud architecture, a multi-cloud environment linked back to our on-premise systems. And that means that any number and types of execution venues will exist, and we must be aware of how data and process flows transcend those. In the past, when we dealt with data and process flows, it was either in an application-to-application world or a business-to-business world. In an application-to-application world, little was focused on issues beyond the firewall. It was work, logic, process flow, collaboration. In the B2B world, little really focused on application logic, but it emphasized security, standardization, translation, non-repudiation of receipt, working with our business partners and suppliers. Hybrid cloud integration must deal with both, all of those things, application-to-application integration, business-to-business integration, cloud-to-cloud, and any combination of the two, and any combination of those. The issue of data ownership comes into play. It becomes very critical in a hybrid cloud architecture. As data transcends boundaries, challenges exist, and they need to be understood and controlled through an initiative that controls governance, risk, and compliance, including an auditing of data flow and accessibility of use. Orchestration is needed to assure business continuity. And when I say business continuity, I don't mean business continuity within the context of a disaster recovery plan. I mean business continuity with respect to business process and orchestration flows. To give you a simple example, a simple business process in an enterprise is a procurement process. Someone requisitions something, someone buys something, someone brings the materials into the organization and puts them in inventory or storage in some way, and then someone pays for them. 4 different steps, usually 4 different organizations, 4 different systems, or even more systems. When you start moving workloads across hybrid cloud architecture, you must be aware of how those workloads and how the shift of those workloads affect process orchestration and affect business continuity. And you also want to be able to exploit what we call best execution venue, meaning what is the best place for a certain workload? How do I take advantage of the economics of cloud services or the elasticity of their capabilities? So these are the issues that hybrid clouds introduce into our IT strategy. What hybrid cloud is doing is driving new modernization efforts to bring technology and resources up to speed. And I want to talk a little bit about IT modernization. Typically, it's an ongoing strategic initiative to enable some form of competitive advantage, and by controlling cost or impacting quality some way, streamlining processes and tasks, consolidating various resources, making certain that the bottom line is well attended, and to upgrade skills. But what IT modernization can get bogged down in, sadly, is that it gets too technical. It must result in some type of measurable performance in that regard. It is not a software upgrade or new hardware or just a SaaS deployment. IT modernization to enable competitive advantage must be considered a continuous improvement program, and industry-leading enterprises who are successful at that are pursuing it as such. But sadly, IT modernization is often too tactical. It looks exclusively on the IT end of IT modernization, when in fact it should address business modernization as well. So that when we look at modernization projects, the tools that are selected often enough are focused on IT, application remodeling, source code analysis, refactoring, discovery tools, etc. And while this is all well and good, and these are needed, there needs to be other capability, there needs to be other tools that precede these tools. Because what happens in IT modernization is not just IT drivers that are behind the effort. There are business drivers and market drivers. IT drivers typically focus on avoiding IT obsolescence or upgrading systems and applications or exploiting emerging technologies. But simultaneously in your enterprise, there'll be other drivers, business drivers, that require me to do a better job of risk and compliance, to do a better job of customer relationship management, to do a better job of managing my resources at large. And at the higher end, market drivers can push modernization initiatives depending on the actions of rivals in your market, mergers and acquisitions, and the actions of government. All of these drivers occur simultaneously, and they're driven at different levels. The C-level is interested in the marketing drivers. The business drivers are kind of guided by various lines of business. And of course, IT drivers are by IT organizations. And all of these occur simultaneously. From the bottom up, it's applications, automations, and collaboration, and from the top down, it's vision and control, and IT is stuck in the middle. In the very middle there is analytic metrics and results. All of these drivers occur simultaneously. They're not in isolation. That means there's a burden on the IT organization to coordinate such initiatives and make certain that it benefits the enterprise at large. So to do that, you need to start strategically. There needs to be a higher order of planning and analysis, a different type of planning and analysis. Spreadsheets to manage our IT infrastructure and architecture are no longer adequate. And so that typically means an architectural approach when looking at a hybrid IT, meaning looking at the enterprise as a whole and organizing the various drivers of IT modernization in some way. We also did another survey. This is part of our Cloud Computing Wave 7 survey, and we asked clients, what's the roadblocks to reaching the next phase in hybrid cloud? And as you'll note, 58% stated that the roadblocks aren't technical. They're people and time, they're organization, they're buy-in, resistance, business justification, internal organization issues. You know, I'm sure if you kind of step back and ask this question to basically any IT project, you'll get similar results. But the point here is that to be able to overcome these roadblocks, a better type of analysis is required, more detailed analysis, more accurate data. You need to understand the cause and effect relationships of change. When I add hybrid infrastructure into my IT architecture, what is the best way to do it? What will give me the greatest impact? How do I optimize my investment dollars by using hybrid IT? So many companies take an enterprise architectural approach. They look at it from an enterprise architecture perspective. Enterprise architecture in general has had its own trials and tribulations, and in some cases has been considered to be an overly complex initiative when you start using things like TOGAF or the Zachman framework or other models. Nevertheless, those frameworks help establish the foundation for understanding how your enterprise is structured. Enterprise architecture is basically a framework for capturing business strategy. People who practice enterprise architecture do it consistently and apply a methodology to its approach. It's a consistent practice, and it's a blueprint for IT modernization initiatives. Many industry-leading enterprises are using enterprise architecture as a means to enable an intelligent approach to decision-making. The next level of detail to that, though, is to organize your enterprise into a series of portfolios. Portfolio management has emerged in IT and enterprises at large to do a better job of planning and control within an enterprise. What is portfolio management? Well, it's a technique to use to control and optimize the efficiency and return from very diverse and disparate assets. It's looked at periodically to make structural adjustments, and it's a kind of a technique that's been used successfully in finance and various IT projects, but it's now starting to be used more broadly for business strategy, application rationalization, governance, risk, and compliance. What portfolios do is they create essentially a meta model of data that's used to help analyze structure and capabilities to improve performance. Things like measuring, prioritizing, eliminating redundancies. Portfolio management reveals assets that yield strategic value and better financial returns, and it also exposes those that do not. And it also helps companies manage the assets of their enterprise using life cycle management techniques, from conception all the way through to rationalization and maybe end of life. So portfolio management is used as a strategic planning tool within the enterprise architecture strategy of an enterprise to be able to do a better job of decision making when it comes to IT and when it comes to business performance. What companies have been doing is building out various types of portfolios given based on the market drivers and the business drivers and the IT drivers earlier. Common business portfolios or common portfolio types that are used include a capabilities portfolio, process, and applications portfolios. There are others, strategic initiatives, business architecture, et cetera, depending on the enterprise. But the ones that are most commonly used revolve around capabilities, processes, and applications. So what a lot of enterprises have done that to help organize the complexity of IT and fully exploit hybrid cloud architecture is to build a capability portfolio. Capabilities define what a business does. It doesn't say, how to do things. This is not necessarily, step-by-step process model, but it allows a common platform to describe the business between business and IT folks. They're stable, they're not redundant, there's usually one per business model. They map to line of businesses, they map to business units, and they align IT deployments to architecture. Examples of capability portfolios, industry standard models, include the International Foundation for Information Technology, which is structured kind of as this 7-tier capability model. Another is APQC, which has built their process classification framework, which many enterprises use as a capability portfolio. And it describes 12 types of processes and services across operating management and support to help enterprises structure their capabilities so they can focus on those that work well, those that need improvement, and those that need changing. This is an example of a company called Sloan Valve that built a capability model around processes and applications. They structure their entire enterprise around 5 core processes, 5 enabling processes, 5 governance processes, and 1 strategic planning process. They've built a portfolio of these capabilities and processes, and they found it to be very effective in managing their enterprise. So portfolio management governed by enterprise architecture has been very successful for this company. And it's an example of how to use enterprise architecture and portfolio management to guide strategy and operations. What are some of the techniques and tools needed to design and run and adapt hybrid clouds? Well, to begin exploiting hybrid architecture for competitive advantage, the tools that you use, the planning and analysis tools, need a series of analytic lenses. It's not just building a model and doing ad hoc analysis from that. Various types of analytic techniques need to be deployed, like benchmarks, financial analysis, understanding redundancies and feasibility. The most important thing here is those analytic lenses need to understand the cause and effect relationships, meaning if I make a change, if I use a cloud service and add it to my IT infrastructure, and I start shifting around workloads to exploit those cloud services, what other effects, what are the cause and effect relationships does that create? And then how do I rationalize as I learn? Meaning, given applications, do I retain the applications? Do I outsource? Do I rehost? How do I structure my workloads or rationalize my workloads given the analytic lenses that is needed? So there's tools emerging to enable you to manage portfolios from an enterprise architecture approach, provide analytic lenses, and then be able to conclude the various appropriate rationalization strategy from there. Now, I mentioned cause and effect earlier. This diagram helps you understand cause and effect. If you look at enterprise architecture models in general, they can be pretty complicated. TOGAF and Zachman framework and others are pretty comprehensive in mapping out an enterprise, but they're also overwhelming to the uninitiated. So what I tried to do is put this chart together to understand how cause and effect relationships exist within an enterprise. At the very top hand left is the environment that we work in: customers, competitors, regulations. The C level of an organization establishes the business goals and strategy from the enterprise. From that, a business model is created that drives products, services, and markets. That drives an operating model, which drives value chain, core processes, and measurement system, key performance indicators. That drives a capability model, my resources, skills, and tools. That drives an organizational structure, which can then branch off. And each of those lines of business and functions can then have their own strategy, their own goals, their own structures. And that derives their own process models, key performance indicators, and policies. And that's where the selection of applications and services are needed that drive information and data and ultimately IT services. When properly structured, positive outcomes are achieved that map back to the top, the vision, goals, and strategies, and the business model. I put this for your consideration because most IT folks operate at layer 8, 9, and 10. But if you make a change anywhere in that enterprise model, it has ripple effects, and it has other cause and effect relationships that need to be understood. Those cause and effect relationships can't be understood very well with just spreadsheet analysis or some of the fundamental business and intelligence tools that we use today. Something else needs to be applied. So what are the best and worst practices of hybrid cloud enablement? Well, in the hybrid era, as I mentioned, data transcendence, governance, risk, and compliance, and business continuity come to play. Making certain that the assets you deployed in hybrid architecture recognize business value and are measurable and control the data and process flows is important. Understanding and prioritizing the drivers and perspective of change, that's those market drivers I talked about. Remember, there's just not one. It's not just IT modernization. There are business and market drivers that are also occurring simultaneously, and they need to be understood by those engaging IT modernization. Enterprise architecture approach helps guide strategy and execution, and portfolio management, lifecycle management are some of the key techniques used to enable hybrid cloud architecture in an enterprise, and doing so via various IT modernization projects, which are part of a continuous improvement program. It's just not a one-off thing. Industry leaders perform this on a continuous basis. Risk and change management practices are integral to successful modernization. So what's the worst practices? Well, it can't be a big bang initiative. It's not an IT upgrade. It's not a technical implementation. You can't be focused on too much on the enterprise or too much on the technology. You need some consistent practices and discipline. And inadequate planning and analysis tools hurt you more than help you. And if portfolios are practiced but not aligned with strategy or each other, that can be a detriment as well. But I guess the bottom line is you need some tools to simplify effort. Those that kind of go it alone and just focus on IT modernization in the hybrid era do so at great effort, and many leading enterprise companies are getting the next level of technology in place to organize their investments and organize their decisions using enterprise architecture management tools. So my hope today was to give you a line of reasoning, a mindset to think about hybrid cloud architecture and how to plan for hybrid cloud architecture to help with your business execution and strategic decision-making processes. With that, I'll ask Dr. Kalex to take over, and he can give you the next level of detail.
Thanks very much, Carl. Very interesting and very comprehensive insight in the background of the topic of hybrid cloud integration. And I will indeed pick up on some of your statements that you made. Obviously, the topics of enterprise architecture and portfolio management are very central to the Alphabet approach, and I will be talking to these topics more specifically on the next slides here. So let's first understand why IT modernization and business IT transformation in general are complex by their very nature. You see here on the right-hand side of my screen that we have a hairball of different facades, I would say, that come into play here. On the one hand, we have the business dimensions, people that own capabilities, that define strategies, that articulate demands. We then have the IT facade, which are revolving around applications, technologies, and devices by and large. We have the teams that are taking care of the change throughout business and IT, and they will obviously anchor their activities on projects, on roadmaps, on skills that are available. And we have teams that take primary responsibility for the constraints that we have to obey, be it risk and compliance constraints, be it budget constraints, or the like. Now, because of the complexity of organizational setups that we are operating in, most of these areas are in the responsibility of individuals. And these individuals have typically a very siloed view of the world. So they will either understand just the business side of the house, and perhaps within the business only one sliver of strategy, or they will just understand the IT, or perhaps one specific set of technologies from within the IT, and so on and so forth. Now, the kind of siloed nature of action and decision-making results in complexities staying undiscovered, in redundancies not being surfaced, in conflicts to be hidden, in overlaps to be unaccounted, and that in and by itself results in extensive errors and conflicts in the transformation and modernization efforts. And that is net-net resulting in suboptimality in these efforts, and oftentimes these efforts not delivering to the expectations that had been defined at the outset. Now, as Carl had highlighted, portfolio management is an important element to get this right. Portfolio management is still something that will happen in specific dimensions. So we will be talking about many different portfolios, and here are 3 examples on the slides. Business strategy portfolios, which of many strategies that business is currently entertaining will we be pursuing? Change portfolios is another one. Of the different opportunities that we have identified for investments, which are the ones that we really should be going after, and optimizing the portfolio of existing assets. And when I say existing assets, I'm primarily talking about applications, technologies, information assets, services assets. So which of these assets are future-proof? Which of these assets need evergreening investments? Which of these assets may perhaps have reached or gone beyond the climax of their value to the enterprise and perhaps needs replacement or simple removal? Taking these portfolio decisions has 2 important side effects. One is we need to understand, we need to project, we need to anticipate, we need to simulate the effect that a portfolio decision has on other portfolios that we have in the enterprise. And two, we need to articulate the downstream effect of our portfolio decision. And that means that as I'm taking a portfolio decision, I'm not immediately transacting that decision. It is being transacted in typically a journey that may be taking us weeks or months for completion, and any subsequent decision making need to be fully aware of the portfolio decision that I have already taken. And that means that when we look at portfolio management as a premise for hybrid cloud decision making, we need to keep in mind the four characteristics that Carl had already highlighted, which is we need to make sure that we capture a comprehensive enough set of metadata that allows us to manage ongoingly performance improvement. We need to be sure that we keep an eye on the value that asset provides to the organization, and that we keep optimizing that value. We need to incorporate the life cycle aspect of the assets that we are managing, so as to understanding when obsolescence is coming into frame, and taking proactive, timely decision about it. And we need to reassure that assets continue to have strategic value, or that the value that these assets provide to the organization are reflective of the cost associated with such assets. And that is primarily because of the changes that the external environment is imposing on the organization. Now, when we look at the 10 different layers of assessment that Carl had introduced for applying portfolio management to hybrid cloud initiatives, we understand we need to capture strategy, we need to identify the business capabilities and understand where change has to come to light, and we need to understand where cloud concepts can actually play into our hands in terms of raising the probability for attainment of such strategy. So here's an example. We have a business objective to have a caring bank image in the market. We want to understand which of capabilities will allow us to get there, and we will have to understand which of products will be associated with the attainment of that strategy. And lastly, we will also have to get an understanding how this strategic business objective of becoming a caring bank is actually impacting the top or bottom line measures of the overall goals that we have articulated for our organization, be it financial measures, be it customer satisfaction measures, be it market measures or whatsoever. And in this example, we are singling out customer management as a capability that is impacted by this business objective, a capability that needs improvement or change, that needs reconsideration in order to deliver on the business objective of becoming a caring bank. Looking at this through a different lens, we are also interested in knowing what are the strengths, opportunities, and weaknesses associated with these capabilities. And as an example here, we are looking at the strategic differentiation of capabilities, and the operational performance assessment. Where operational performance assessment is represented by a color, a strategic market differentiation is represented by an icon. And we can see that for customer management, both these dimensions are actually married. So we see a very differentiating, strategically important business capability showing a rather undesired operational performance. This is where we want to now anchor conversations around, is potentially hybrid cloud providing us with a proposition that can be a game changer in that context. So we will be assessing the cloud potential for the relevant capabilities here. When we do this, we will be looking at a variety of KPIs. Business affinity may be one dimension. Data classification would certainly be another. The interconnectedness of the supporting IT with other parts of IT, so we call this interface density, will be an important aspect. The scalability will be important because with cloud solutions, typically I get much better flexibility options along the scalability dimension, etc. So when we look at the second shell of the cause and effect structure that Carl had introduced from the organizations through the products and processes into what we call the operating model. So the operating model articulating where and how are we supporting business capabilities in the context of, say, products with the assets that we have as an enterprise. And assets can be like applications, for instance, or they can be organizational entities, for instance. And other dimensions may come into the picture here as well, because this may actually be a function of the markets that we are operating in, or it may be a function of the customer segments that we are dealing with. So having that understanding of the operating model, having an understanding what the operating model should look like in the future as a function of the strategic intentions that we have articulated is an important stepstone in the conversation around hybrid cloud opportunities and integration requirements. So in moving to the next layer, we will then start introspecting individual processes, probably not across the board, but really on a spot-by-spot basis, I would say. We want to analyze the processes as is. We want to then come up with a strengths and weaknesses assessment to see that, okay, the two steps of capturing the order and processing the order are posing specific problems here because they are resulting in undesired additional interactions and delays in the process. They are a cause of error in the process or whatever the situation may be. We come up with changes to these business processes, and we are then translating these changes in business processes into requirements to the applications and technology assets that we are using, these services assets that we are providing from the IT in support of the business. And this will help us to now come to a conversation around what is the best execution venue for a specific set of supports of business capabilities. In order to do so, we will have to take a look at what it is that we have currently and what are the characteristics of what we have. We will do this again through the lens of business capabilities or domains initially. This will give us an understanding of portfolio performance. So here we are looking at criticality versus cloud candidacy versus cost. So the bigger the bubble, the more expensive. The further to the left, the less relevant for cloud conversations. The further to the top, the more critical to business. We will talk about life cycle, and you will remember life cycle being brought up from in Carl's conversation very prominently. We will talk about strategic relevance in understanding, okay, which of our strategy execution conversations are associated with this specific domain of, say, customer management. And we will look at operational stability. Incidents would be potentially one dimension, could be other dimensions as well, like the number of changes that we are making, the investments that we have been making over the course of the last couple of years or so. We will have to understand how these things are interrelated with one another and where do we have potential deficiencies in the data provisioning, in the information provisioning situation. And here is such an example. CRM AI is very badly scoring along the adaptability axis. So this is actually a hindrance to change. It is it's causing cost increases. It is delaying time to value for changes that are being derived from strategy conversations or derived from operational requests from our business partners. So what are the business outcomes that we can propose here? And one potential outcome that we would have is come up with a rating for the applications that we have supporting a specific capability, for instance, to know, okay, which of those applications are interesting from a cloud conversation. Come up with measures that can articulate, that can rank these applications, because typically we are talking at least hundreds, if not even thousands of such applications. So we need to have a structured approach around them. And then look at which are the ones that score high and what are their other characteristics, be it cost as demonstrated here, be it operational stability as discussed earlier, be it business criticality, et cetera, et cetera. And then we will come to a situation where we can conclude that if we were to bring this into a cloud setup, we would actually be able to reduce cost considerably and thereby free up budget that can be used for other more forward-looking, more opportunity-driven opportunities that we may be discussing with business at the same time. So what's the impact of hybrid cloud to enterprise IT? There are many different ways of going about hybrid clouds. We need to understand where we can, where we should use them. We need to understand what the impact on the organization is. We are proposing to use portfolio management as a means to come to a structured, repeatable, and reliable decision. We need to use planning to guide that analysis and to communicate to the rest of the organization. And then ultimately we will have to structure and monitor the associated initiatives to understand how they are delivering to the promises that we have identified. So when we look at the portfolio management approach, there are a number of important dimensions that must be included. Business strategy is an important element because it educates us as to where we should explore. Business capabilities is an important dimension because it allows us to consistently communicate across the organization and to understand where we would potentially be able to piggyback on strategic initiatives with tech modernization aspects that they may bring to bear here. We want to understand what the underlying operating model structures are and how those should evolve into the future. We are proposing a structured approach to assessing potential and compatibility of the various cloud concepts so that we can derive the changes that need to be implemented in our business process portfolios. And ultimately, we will have to look at what the outcomes are, what the values are that we can bring to the organization, and that will drive the decision around what execution venues we should be choosing. With this, we have completed the presentation part of our session today. I don't know whether there were any questions. Maybe Paula, can you?
Yes, we have a couple of questions. Not a lot of time, but we'll see what we can get through here. So I'll address the first question to Carl. Carl, the first question is, which applications typically have a hybrid cloud approach? And is this a result of business strategy or technical necessity?
The applications that we see kind of being deployed in hybrid cloud architecture kind of fall into a series of categories. The ones that are most prominent include various testing and development, e-business, and customer-facing initiatives. Those are the most likely, workloads for hybrid cloud architecture. Less likely for hybrid cloud include things like batch computing applications or back office applications. And of course, there are some collaborative and cloud-native applications that naturally exist in the cloud and are born there and add considerable value to IT architecture.
Can I maybe add here? I think there's a second facet to that question, and that is many of the hybrid cloud solutions actually come into existence in a very opportunistic fashion, almost kind of incidental. Because somebody in business going out on a limb, taking a decision for a cloud offering in order to avoid being asked too many questions. So they have a budget that they can easily allocate, and they have authority to take decision around acquisition of such cloud applications. Now, from a governance, risk, and compliance perspective, companies understand that they need to kind of bring this back into a comprehensive understanding of the overall landscape. They need to understand the risk exposure associated with these solutions, and they need to potentially retroactively introduce governance around these solutions. For IT organizations taking a proactive approach on the topic of cloud, they actually have an opportunity to reduce the kind of surprise spend by business units in the topic of hybrid cloud.
Okay. All right. So, Uli, why don't you go ahead and take the second question. capturing all the information for the IT portfolio approach that both Carl and Uli talked about is a considerable undertaking. Which elements are crucial to start with, and what is the best approach?
I would say that there's no generic answer to this, because it's a bit a function of where your current situation is, what position you take with your enterprise, where the main objectives and pain points are. What we have seen working in a number of cases is understanding the capability model, the capability map, getting consensus with business as to where the winning capabilities are, the differentiating capabilities are, and understanding where the contextual capabilities are. And then using this to map out the application landscape and determine hotspots of opportunity for cloud, hybrid cloud enabled processing. Most companies own a significant amount of legacy in their application landscapes and a significant amount of overlap and redundancy. And cloud concepts, cloud opportunities provide for a good premise to rejuvenate these dated sections of the application landscape. And I think that this will permit organizations to actually free up budget for more opportunity-driven conversations with business.
Okay, thanks. Let's do one last question for Carl. Let's see. All right, we'll take this. The presentation of Alphabet showed a process model. It is the business process that defines how users will interact with systems. So why wouldn't business process management be driving the hybrid cloud integration initiative?
Business process management, business process orchestration is a critical factor in it. But basically, though, it's a subset to what's needed. You know, before I start considering hybrid cloud architecture, I need to consider my entire architecture, IT architecture, within the context of business strategy, as we discussed. A core element of that of business strategy and architecture, and the means to manage it, is through portfolios. Business processes are an example of a portfolio. Understanding all your business processes and which ones are core to execution and which ones are servants to execution needs to be understood. And so BPM becomes, you know, a subset of a superset of portfolio management, and it indeed a critical enabler. But it's only one portfolio in the broader enterprise architecture.
Okay, I'm afraid that's all we have time for, so I'll pass it back to Uli just to conclude the session, and then Jenny can go ahead and end the session.
Okay, thanks, Paula. So thanks everyone on the call today. We hope that this has been an interesting topic for you. We would hope that we get feedback from you on the topic. We would hope to engage further discussion with you on these topics. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Carl for his contribution in the conversation today, and I look forward to speaking with all of you hopefully in the near future.
Thank you, Uli, and thanks again to everyone who joined our webinar today. Thanks to our speakers and question and answers moderator, Paula. And we hope to see you all again online at one of our scheduled December webinar sessions. And with that, have a nice day and goodbye.